Okay, hello everybody. I hope you can all see the slides. This is the BBS UK Education Webinar. Welcome. Okay, so just want to give you a quick overview of some of the things that we'd like to talk to you about today. Most of you are aware that we've just published a new booklet for schools and colleges. So we'd like to give a brief outline of what this booklet contains and how it should be used. We're also going to talk about some of the other resources available and provide an introduction to the SEN provision in school and just some tips to help you advocate for your child or young person in school. And then at the end there'll be an opportunity for you to ask some questions, and I'll come on to how you can do that. On the panel today you have myself, Liz Lockery, Office Manager, Tonya Heimers, Service Manager, Angela Scudder, Patient Liaison Officer, and Rebecca Perfect, Parent Advisor. Okay, so at the end of our slides, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask some questions. We think that anything that's specific to your individual questions are probably better dealt with outside of this webinar. But if you do have some more general questions that you think the answers might benefit everybody on this group, then please do raise them. So at the bottom of the screen, if you hover your cursor, you should get a black bar that appears with a number of icons. If you scroll to the sort of middle of the bar, you'll see a Q&A function. So if you click that Q&A icon, a window will appear that looks like this grey one here, and that's where you can ask your questions. So hopefully that covers it for everybody. And I'll hand over to the other panelists to take you through the slides.
Thanks, Liz. So I'm going to briefly go through a bit about our new booklet, which we are so excited to have published now. It's been a long time in the making and has involved lots of committed and talented individuals from inside and outside our organisation. So when my son was diagnosed around 23 years ago now, BBS UK had a BBS Child at School booklet, which I found really useful through the early years, especially primary school. And over the years it fell out of date and out of print. And although it was on our radar to redevelop, we just didn't seem to be able to get round to doing it. And the push came from a couple of our younger members who told me in clinic about the issues they were facing. They said that they didn't feel listened to, they were fed up of having to keep explaining about BBS and how it affected them, and worse, they didn't feel believed. So it was clear that they needed something that they could use to back them up, something that would help them be heard and taken seriously. So our starting point was the original Child at School booklet, and we incorporated a useful document provided by Stockport Sensory Service. We were made aware of a student passport developed by Gareth Morwood, Director of Curriculum Support at a high school in Stockport, which we felt would be key to ensuring our young people's voices could really be heard. So we asked parents to connect us with any teachers, support teams who they felt were really understanding BBS and understanding their child's needs. And these contacts formed a review panel to ensure that our end booklet was fit for purpose. So it was really important that our young members would feel comfortable with the booklet. So we worked with them during conference weekend and an activity weekend to find out what they wanted their teaching and support team to know. And our hope is that the finished booklet will provide greater awareness and understanding of BBS for those working with our children to enable them to better support them to meet their full potential. I think I've skipped ahead, Liz, on the slides. So yes, as I've just said, so it was the children and young people who have BBS and experienced and exemplar SENCOs, teachers and LSAs and we used our conference and activity events, bringing our young people and their parents together to make sure that we were on the right tracks. There were 2 review stages through the process to make sure that, as I said, the product was fit for purpose. So a key aim for this is empowering our young people and giving them encouragement and the tools to become advocates for themselves. So how to use the booklet, I think when your child is old enough to understand about BBS and how it may be affecting them, go through the booklet with them. And we want them to, I think, full disclosure, to know what they're handing to their teachers, to know what the booklet contains. And then support them with completing the All About Me section in the back. Use additional paper. It doesn't have to fit within those boxes. They can draw pictures. You can write their words for them. It's key is that it's their words, it's their thoughts about how this affects them. Feel free to fill in a copy as well, although it should be made clear that this is your thoughts, and that is an addition to the child's version. So once the idea is that this All About Me is then taken by the teaching team and transferred onto a student passport that each person who has contact with that child will have a copy of. So I think early stages of the draft of this document is make sure you get a copy, and again you go through it with your child and that they're happy with it. And then of course check that the passport is being used. So another of our booklets, it's still got our old branding, but it is a recent booklet. It's a transition handbook for our young people called My Life, My Future. And this was again produced in collaboration with our young people. And it essentially provides a framework for having conversations with our young people about self-advocacy, BBS, the future, changes, and aims to help develop those self-advocacy skills and confidence. It's the only resource we have that is specifically aimed at our young people, and we aim to get it adapted and onto our website so they've got their own section to access. So an accompaniment to the booklet for schools is an information resource we've put together, which is to support our parents with navigating SEND provision. It can be downloaded from our website. It outlines the SEND provision and education, health and care plans in some detail, and also it includes some really useful advocacy tips to enable parents to really advocate well on behalf of their child. And there's also some really useful information about how to involve young people in the discussions and the decisions about their education and future. There's our BBS UK website is undergoing some changes, and it's been reorganised and now includes a knowledge hub, which is where all our resources and booklets are kept. And there's also a dedicated section for education. And of course, we now have this webinar, which is being recorded and will be made available on our website, which we hope will be useful for parents starting out navigating the SEN system. So that's enough from me. I'm going to pass over now to Angela, who will be talking about that SEND and EHCP in more detail.
Thank you, Tonya. So I'm Angela Scudder. I'm the Patient Liaison Officer at Great Ormond Street and St Thomas's Hospital, so a few of you will know me. I just wanted to point out at this stage, obviously we have clinics in Birmingham too, and anything I say today covers our whole community, and Amy will be able to support you after this and throughout your educational journey as well. Rebecca's going to jump in as well at stages because she has a wealth of knowledge on education, so feel free to jump in, Bex. SEN support. When we think about SEN support, we very much think of EHCPs. What we wanted to make clear today is that there's a lot of other support and possibly by accessing this support first, we'll build the framework for your EHCP should you need it as well. So we're going to start off with thinking about sort of basic support that schools may give to your child, which some of you may know as an IEP, an individual educational plan. They will be called, you know, slightly different things in slightly different areas. And this comes from a framework from the Code of Practice that talks about this four-part cycle: access, plan, do, and review. So this is where the school will identify the difficulties that your child may have. This may be because they've witnessed them themselves, or you have gone to them before your child started school and said, you know, my child may have difficulty with this. This will all be documented and reviewed. It should be reviewed every half term, so every 6 weeks. And you should be going to the school and having a meeting termly with the school and with a copy every 6 weeks as well. The more input that you give to the school, the more you will get out. So, you know, don't become a nuisance, but build really good relationships, you know, build really strong networks within the school and with external support as well. So, you know, you can see on the slide that we've mentioned that the school can ask for input from third-party sectors. You can too, and bring everybody together. So yeah, I hope has anybody got any questions at this point on that before we move on? Liz, is there any? Can we move on? Okay. So now we move on to what an EHCP is and what they may look like. At this point, I also wanted to mention that with an EHCP, just because you have a diagnosis of BBS or any other medical diagnosis, it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to get an EHCP. This is a conversation we have a lot in clinic. An EHCP is rewarded on a needs basis and not a diagnostic basis. However, saying that, your prognosis part of BBS could help you to start to evidence build to get your EHCP. So what is an EHCP? So an EHCP is an educational health and care plan. So the idea is it brings together education, health and social care. So when we talk about social care, we're thinking of things like direct payments, social care packages, holiday clubs. All that sort of thing should feed into your EHCP. It may be the first conversation that you have about it, but it should definitely be documented on your EHCP. An EHCP is for a child or a young person or an adult, because it is 0 to 25, that needs additional support more than their educational setting can offer. So once you've exhausted the support that the school can offer within their financial boundaries, and you know, maybe there is an interim that they may have an extra pot of money, the school should start to apply for an EHCP if they feel that they can't support the child to their best potential with the pot of money they have.
So, and also if a parent feels that what provisions the school are giving is just not meeting their child's needs, then they can obviously ask for an educational healthcare plan as well.
Absolutely. So. And at this point we should probably say as well that it's not just the school that can ask for an EHCP, it's actually you as a parent. If the young person is over 16 and cognitively able, they're allowed to ask for their own EHCP as well. So you can apply to the local authority for that. I think that might come up on the next slide. Yeah.
Angela, just we have had a question from Katrina with regards to this. And can you just clarify, when we talk about EHCPs, she says, does the same apply to college FE as well as schools?
So yes, yeah, Bex is nodding as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's 0 to 25. So should we move on to the next slide? So sorry, I've just covered some of this as well. So, you know, we were saying about the young person can ask for the assessment themselves. I always advocate, of those of you that are in the GOSH or the St Thomas's Clinic will know, that if you have a good relationship with the school and the school are proactive, that I feel it's best that the school applies. Bex, agree or disagree?
I agree. I think that often schools will, because of the amount of paperwork that's involved in applying, that schools will often say, don't worry, you don't need one. And it's not necessarily the right decision, because the school, this is about your child moving through the education system. So you may feel that actually I would like to apply for one, and schools, what we find where I live in Hertfordshire, that a lot of the time the schools say, no, we're fine, you don't need one. But don't just take that as an answer. Really think about what you think and explore and look at what other children are doing in your local area, because it does formalise support within the classroom and the education system, and that's essential. You do need support formalised.
And this is where, going back to the first slide, when we said about the 4-part cycle and the individual educational plans, this is where, by having a copy of this every 6 weeks, you can start to build your own file and your own summary of what's going on, and that will track how much your child is improving. Or maybe not, or maybe falling behind. And like Beck says, that's where you need to make up your own mind and you know, work with the school, or go ahead and contact the local authority and ask for an assessment yourself. Other people can apply for an EHCP as well. So, you know, doctors, medical professionals, social workers, they can all apply for EHCPs too. However, that is, you know, not really normal practice, but they can. Bex, would you like to talk about the timeframes of the EHCP?
So once the decision, or you as a family or the school have decided that you want to complete an educational health care plan, because it's a legal document, there are a lot of time frames that you as a family will be working through. So at the first stage, you have to formally request an educational healthcare needs assessment, and you do this to the SEN department in your local authority. Once the request is made, the local authority have 6 weeks in order to begin that process. They will start gathering evidence from the school, from you as a family, which is one of the things that's really good about the document that BBS UK have created, is that actually within the passport, you're starting your educational healthcare plan by doing the bits about your child, how their disability impacts them in education. So, you know, you can use all that information with your SEN worker to start looking at what kind of support and provision that you need within your child's school. I think I need the next slide because I don't remember it all off the top of my head. So you get to week 6, the assessment has started. The parent or the child will then be issued with their draft EHCP, and you then have 15 calendar days, and that is essential to remember. It is a time frame, because it's legal, that you have to work within. In that time, you have to review the plan. You have to request often with the local authority to have a meeting to discuss what's being written by your SEN officer in the plan. Are you happy with what's being written, or are there things that you feel that you would like to change? The most important thing for most of our parents at BBS is that at this point is where you and the school and all the people working with the educational healthcare plan name the school that you think is going to be most able to meet your child's needs. It may be that you wish for them to remain in the school that they're currently in, or you wish them to move into something more specialist and more able to meet your child's needs. If it's a transition from say junior education into secondary education, then naming the secondary school or college that you've visited and you feel meets those needs. Once those 15 days are up, the local authority will then have 15 days to access and speak to the educational establishment that you've named in your report. Is there anything you want to say, Angela, about that? I don't know.
No, I just think with regards to naming the schools, you know, I think you need to do your homework so far in advance.
Yes.
Because local authorities will be trying to fill the spaces where they have empty spaces, and you need to look at the schools. Even though you think there's no way my child is going to go to that school, you need to go into that school and list the reasons why your child can't go to that school, why they should go to the school you want.
Sorry, I suppose we should have focused more earlier on the fact that during this whole process, you will be visiting schools, you will have an idea about the school that you want. What may happen, and what often happens, is that your view about a college or a school will be different to those of the local authority. It may be things around local authorities often favour a school within their area. You may like a school that's over the boundary in another county. That's obviously going to have cost implication for your local authority. So you will know during this whole process, and there's always going to be someone from BBS UK or someone within your support network to help you kind of explore all the options. You will at this stage know whether the local authority is supporting your decision or not. I mean, this is a very broad overview of the process, but it's, you know, often it works very smoothly, but in other cases you may feel very differently to your support, your local authority about the college.
I think Liz's got a question.
Yeah, I've just thought of something that might be helpful to other people. Is what happens if your child starts a mainstream school and you haven't identified at that point that they've got any specific needs when it comes to learning. So they start the EHCP process when they're already in a school. How does the process differ?
The process wouldn't necessarily. Are you talking about someone that has already got an EHCP, or they're just no?
So say for example they start at a mainstream school, and then the teachers identify that they're struggling. How does it differ?
It wouldn't necessarily differ, because it may be that you're just naming another school. The school have highlighted they're unable to meet the needs of that specific child. So it would, I have a child currently I'm working with who wants to move into a more specialist school. So we're just starting the educational healthcare plan, and the local authority know that we are going to be naming another school that better meets their needs, and the school are supporting it, they're encouraging it, because they're no longer able to meet the needs of that child.
It's actually helpful as well if the current placement says we can't meet the needs of that child. That, you know, that's the best thing that can happen if you want to move into a more specialist or just a different provision. Yeah,
there's often issues if a school feel that they can meet the needs, but the parent maybe feels that, you know, I'm often have parents describe to me that they feel that the school that their child's attending is just babysitting them. They don't feel that the school is able to provide them with an education, but it's just, you know, a holding place for them. And that's, you know, they're requesting an educational healthcare plan so we can really illustrate the shortcomings of that child's education because of their disability. So,
and this is where the evidence building comes in, with all the steps before the EHCP.
Yeah. So obviously, if we just go through the last 2 stages, by week 16, sometimes a local authority will decide that they aren't going to issue an educational healthcare plan. If that was to happen to any of our parents, they will be notified about the right to appeal. Often parents choose to appeal, and if that was something they wanted to do, then we can signpost them in lots of different directions for support that's available from charities that can help you appeal the decision of the local authority. But it's something you have to kind of think about, because it is quite a lot of work, but often parents win the appeals. So, and again, evidence is your friend. That's the thing that's going to be helping you through this process. And week 20, once everything's happened marvellously and you've got your named school, you have a wealth of support for your child. Your EHCP is issued. This document follows your child through their education, and it must be reviewed every year by the local authority. Reviews, again, I have lots of information I can send to parents about reviews. Again, it's a legal process, so there's a time frame that surrounds reviews. But they're very good, because as Liz asked earlier, it may be your child has an educational healthcare plan, but you're now feeling, you know, this isn't right for my child, this school isn't working. It worked while he was younger, but actually he now needs something different. The review is the stage that you then say, I don't feel this school is meeting my child's needs, and I would like to explore other avenues, or to increase the amount of support they're getting on a daily and weekly basis.
So also with regards to the review, like Bex pointed out, it's an annual review that has to happen within a certain time frame. If everything falls apart somewhere else in the calendar year, which, you know, it will do, it never works to time, you can call an interim review at any time. And this is where it's good, is once you get your EHCP, or even before, once you get your assessment, you will be allocated a caseworker at your local authority. You should store their number in your phone, because if you ever do need to call a review, that's the first person that you should go to.
Yes. I can see Katrina's asked a question. Sorry. Yes, where I currently live, and I don't know, Angela will know for her area, but what we're finding with the reviews is they're being slightly delayed, and also they're not being done in person currently. So reviews are being done virtually, which again is causing its own issues. That, you know, the specialists aren't getting to see the children face to face, and as we often know, children can present very differently virtually to being in a
absolutely
setting.
So yeah, I mean, I think most places are trying to you know, do reviews by Zoom now. So yeah, I mean, the review must take place, so whether that's on a virtual platform or a face-to-face platform. I do think there is an argument, you know, at the moment, that because children are attending schools, you know, to argue that you could go in, obviously, as long as you can social distance safely. You know, there's an argument that you could have a face-to-face review. On saying that, though, on some of the reviews that I've supported over lockdown, they've worked better because more support is there. So people that wouldn't normally turn up to your review, such as, you know, speech and language, sensory support, are actually there. So yeah, that works well.
It's pros and cons, aren't there? Pros.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we need the next slide.
Yeah.
Do you want to cover this bit?
Yeah.
Well, can't even. Oh, it's top tips. Yes.
So yeah, so we're going to speak about some tips that we've kind of learnt ourselves, you know, over supporting our BBS community as well. So to be thinking about transition dates as well. So transition dates could be starting nursery, going from nursery to primary, going from primary to secondary, and then on to further education. Now, you need to be thinking about these dates a year before you would for, say, your mainstream child that doesn't have any needs. You know, unfortunately, they like to put extra pressure when there's pressure already there. So you're having to think about this a year in advance. So quite often at your year 5 review, for instance, you will be asked to name your secondary provision for year 7. You really do need to start to do your homework throughout your child's education to know what your next stage is going to be. And also to take into consideration is your clinic report. So in the clinic report, we do try to reflect what is going to be happening to your child or young person before the next appointment. So our clinics are, you know, starting to be about 18 months, 2 years apart. So if you can, you know, let us know what you're thinking about education there. Are you thinking about staying into mainstream? Are you thinking about going into secondary? Because we can really reflect that in the report writing, which can all feed into your evidence as well. And we mentioned, we touched earlier on building relationships in education health locally, because we can offer specialist support with regards to BBS, but much of this is very much a postcode lottery, so different areas are offering many different things. As most of you will know, you know, when you're talking on Facebook, you know, just even the difference in sensory support that you're all receiving is just incredible. So really build local relationships, get to know what's going in your area. I'm a big advocate of becoming part of your parent care and forum, because you really get to know what's going on there. As Beck said earlier, the EHCP is a legal document. So there's lots of words that should and shouldn't be used from a vague kind of point of view. So there is, I don't know if we're able to share, we do have some words that we're able, okay, but when you're writing your reviews, try and avoid things like should, and say must or when required, you know, etc. Words like that. We can help you with that. We can, you know, read over some of your reviews, but it should be clear that your child, oh, Tonya, sorry, go ahead.
I think there was that document you were referring to there, Angela. So we can't share it because it's protected. It's a SOS SEN document, but it can be downloaded from their website, and we can direct
people to that website.
Yeah,
they have quite a few documents that you can purchase at very cheap prices. It's called Weasel Words, and it's what you notice is that the council will tend to use certain words, like you say, should or regularly, and that is just not enough. When you if you go to appeal the document, they're unenforceable legally, those words, so it's open to too much interpretation, and that's what previous people have found. So insist on, you have to literally scrub it out and put a word that is more definitive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, Tonya and Bex have just mentioned the resource that you can download, which would be really good. But I think places like MenCap offer a read service of your EHCPs, and they're really good at, you know, tweaking a few words that can make so much difference to the outcome of your EHCP. And again, you know, the same applies. The next line says about, you know, number of hours, frequency of support. It's, you know, nothing can be woolly in these reports. Everything has to be really, really clear, so there's no confusion.
The school can't interpret it differently.
Yeah,
it's a legal document, so make sure the number of hours and the frequency of that support is written, because if the school aren't providing it, they're breaking a legal obligation, and that's the key. You have to get them to write.
Yeah, something like you know, should have large print for most of their work. Just, you know, that would be, you know, that could be interpreted in any way. You know, it should be, you know, must have large print for all work. It's just the difference of those couple of words have made.
Yeah, there was one other point, but I think we've skipped over the...
Yeah, there was one that we've jumped on the slide.
Sorry.
That's okay. So we did touch on these points earlier as well. So again, social media, local parents groups and that, get to know really what's going on in your local area, as well as national internally as OM. And as Beck said, the EHCP should be reviewed, must be reviewed. Sorry, there's me with my should and must be reviewed once a year.
I think SEN is a really good one to follow on social media, because they do provide a lot of workshops online currently, for very cheap, just to kind of go through the process with you. And Special Needs Jungle do a few webinars, but that's all webinars. That's all on the new document, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think also that we haven't got on here is also to remember that BBS is a spectrum. So just because, you know, you've met a parent in clinic and, you know, their child has a certain support, your child may need very different supports. So, you know your child, and what support would be helpful to them rather than just what other people are getting. So I think, is there any more questions?